Inspired by Motown's assembly line of sound, George Clinton gradually put together a collective of over 50 musicians and recorded the ensemble during the 70s both as Parliament and Funkadelic. While Funkadelic pursued band-format psychedelic rock, Parliament engaged in a funk free-for-all, blending influences from the Godfathers such as James Brown and Sly Stone, with freaky costumes and themes inspired by 60s acid culture and science fiction. From Parliament's 1970 inception until Clinton's dissolving of the band in 1980, they hit the R&B top 10 with funk classics such as Up for the Downstroke, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker, Flashlight, and Aqua Boogie. They truly excelled into other areas, effective album statements, including platinum releases, Mothership Connection, and Funkin' to Lucky versus the Placido Syndrome, a most dazzling, extravagant live show in the business. After Clinton fused his concepts for P-Funk All-Stars, he revitalized them separately in the 2010s, first with an album from Funkadelic, and then one with Parliament, Medicaid Frog Dog, in 2018. By the time his on-the-move family settled in New Jersey during the early 50s, George Clinton, born in 1941 in Kannapolis, North Carolina, became interested in doo-wop, which was just beginning to explode in the New York metro area. Basing his group on Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, Clinton formed the Parliaments in 1955 with a lineup that gradually shifted to include Clarence Fuzzy Haskins, Grady Thomas, Raymond Davis, and Calvin Simon. Based out of a barbershop backroom where Clinton straightened hair, the Parliaments released only 2 singles during the next 10 years, but frequent mid-60 trips to Detroit, where Clinton began working as a songwriter and producer, eventually paid off their investment. After finding a hit with the 1967 single I Wanna Testify, the Parliaments ran into trouble with Revelot Records and refused to record any new material. Instead of waiting for a settlement, Clinton decided to record the same band under a new name, Funkadelic. Founded in 1960, the group began life as a smokescreen, claiming as its only members the Parliament's backing band guitarist Eddie Hazel, bassist Billy Nelson, rhythm guitarist Lucius Tull Ross, drummer Ramon Tiki Fullwood, and organist Mickey Atkins. But in truth, including Clinton and the rest of the former Parliament's lineup, Revelot folded not long after, with the label's existing contracts sold to Atlantic. Clinton, however, decided to abandon the Parliament's name rather than record for the major label. By 1970, Clinton had regained the rights to the Parliament's name. He then signed the entire Funkadelic lineup to Invictus Records as Parliament. The group released one album, 1970's Osmium, and scored a number 30 hit breakdown on the R&B chart in 1971. With Funkadelic firing on all cylinders, however, Clinton decided to discontinue Parliament, the name, not the band, for the time being. Though keyboard player Bernie Worrell played on the original Funkadelic album, his first credit with the conglomeration appeared on Funkadelic's second album, 1970's Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow. Clinton and Worrell had known each other since the New Jersey barbershop days, and Worrell soon became the most crucial cog in the P-Funk machine, working on arrangements and production for virtually all later Parliament Funkadelic releases. His strict upbringing and classical training at the New England Conservatory and Juilliard, as well as the boom in synthesizer technology during the early 70s, gave him the tools to create the synth runs and horn arrangements that later trademarked the P-Funk sound. 2 years after the addition of Laurel, P-Funk added its second most famed contributor, Bootsy Collins. The muscular, throbbing bass line of Collins had already been featured in James Brown's backing band, the JBs, along with his brother guitarist, Catfish Collins. Bootsy and Catfish were playing in a Detroit band when George Clinton saw and hired them. Funkadelic released 5 albums from 1970 through early 1974 and consistently hit the lower reaches of the R&B chart. But the collective pulled up stakes later in 1974 and began recording as Parliament, signing with Casablanca label Parliament's Up for the Downstroke, number 10 R&B and number 63 on the pop, appeared in mid-1974 and reflected a more mainstream approach than Funkadelic. With funky horn arrangements reminiscent of James Brown and a live feel that recalls contemporary work by Kool and the Gang, it became the biggest hit yet for the Parliament Funkadelic congregation. Testify, a revamped version of the Parliament's 1967 hit, also charted in 1974. And 1 year later, Chocolate City continued Parliament's success. The title track reached number 24 R&B, and Ride On also charted. Clinton and Company ushered in 1976 with the April release of the third Parliament LP in as many years, Mothership Connection. Arguably the peak of Parliament's power, the album made number 13 on the pop chart and went platinum, sparked by 3 singles: P-Funk, Wants to Get Funked Up, number 33 R&B, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker, Give Up the Funk, number 5 R&B, number 15 pop, and Star Child, number 26 R&B. In addition to Bootsy, the album featured 2 other James Brown refugees, horn legends Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley. Just 6 months after the release of Mothership Connection, Clinton had another Parliament album in the can, The Clones of Dr. Funkenstein. Though it only reached gold status, the LP spawned the number 22 R&B hit Do That Stuff and a number 43 Dr. Funkenstein. Several internal squabbles in 1977 apparently didn't faze Clinton at all. The following year proved to be the most successful in Parliament's history, and in January, Flashlight from the Parliament album Funkadelic versus the Procedural Syndrome became the collective's first number 1 hit. It topped the R&B charts for 3 weeks and was followed by a number 27 single, Funkadelic. The LP reached number 13 on the pop chart and became Parliament's second platinum album. Early in 1979, Parliament hit number 1 yet again with Aqua Boogie from its 8th album, Motor Booty Affair. The LP, which reached number 23, became the group's 5th consecutive album to go gold or better. Parliament's 9th album, Glory Holla Stupid, or Pin the Tail on the Funky, was released in 1979. The group charted in the R&B Top 10 twice during 1980, Theme from the Black Hole and Agony of Defeat. But Clinton began to weigh down that year with difficulties arising from Polygram's acquisition of Casablanca. Jettisoning both the Parliament and Funkadelic names, but not the musicians, Clinton began his solo career with 1982's Computer Games. He and many former Parliament Funkadelic members continued to tour and record during the 80s as the P-Funk All-Stars. The decade's disdain of everything from the 1970s resulted in the neglect of critical and commercial opinion for the world's biggest funk band, especially one which in part spawned the sound of disco. During the early 90s, the rise of funk-inspired rap, courtesy of Digital Underground, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Warren G, among many others, and funk rock, Primus, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, re-established the status of Clinton and Company, one of the most important forces in the recent history of black music. Funkadelic reactivated for the 2014 album First You Gotta Shake That Gate. Parliament, topical as ever, followed suit 4 years later with the Medicaid Frog Dog, which took an aim at the pharmaceutical industry. Thank you for watching.
To find that the planet had fallen prey to the dread placebo syndrome, spread by the evil Sir Nose devoid of funk.
I am Sir Nose, devoid of funk.
Man was fast becoming an endangered species, and Parliament had but one choice: to declare war. From his arsenal of secret weapons, Dr. Funkenstein unveils his pop gun.
Shoot them with pop gun.
The only hope to win the battle of Funkenteleki versus the placebo syndrome. Parliament's Funkenteleki versus the placebo syndrome. The battle of the century from Casablanca Record and Film Works.
So good. Being aware of the non-ending condition of our radically non-logical, necessary, and yet free and responsible nature.
Glory, hella stupid, or pin the tail on the funk gang. This is the Big Bang from Parliament on Casablanca Record and Film Works.
Please